Today we're going to talk about a little bit of a different concept. It's called proactively taking map space. It's a little bit more niche, I would say, but with Overwatch 2 coming out, it's really relevant because this concept won't change no matter, with 5v5, 66, different heroes, doesn't matter. It'll always still, be useful. So that's why I want to talk about it. Plus, it's something I think I've noticed a lot of teams not really do this correctly or understand it correctly. So before we go into proactively taking map space, we need to define sort of map control first and have sort of people hopefully understand that. So first of all, what is map control? So map control, in my opinion, is, and how I look at it, is when you essentially have the map space. So let's say blue team is attacking here, red team is sort of set up, aka red team now has map control. Now let's say, this fight happens, red team loses, then blue team will be able to set up, right, and sort of control the map. And red team will have to retake, in which case now red team now is retaking for map control. Blue team has map control. Okay, we can give a few more examples here, but one thing I do want you to realize is it doesn't matter if you're on attack or defense. Map control, attack and defense is relative. It doesn't really matter as much. You can have map control whether you're on attack or defense, right? You can be retaking map control whether you're on attack or defense in terms of a payload map or Koth map or anything. So that's why it's really nice to look at it. And you might also think map control, but you could also say point control, right? I like map control because it's a bit more generalized and it's not just specific about actually who has the point. We care about actually who's holding the entire map. But let's give a few more examples. So let's say here, let's say this fight happens and red team loses. Then if red team loses, now blue team would be able to set up, and then they would have map control, and red team would have to retake map control. Now if red team wins here, then you can probably guess it, hopefully. Then red team would be able to set up, and then they would have map control, and then blue team would have to try and retake map control. So hopefully this concept makes sense. It'll explain a bit further why I'm going into stuff later in this VOD in a few minutes. But it's also important just to understand how map control works, because generally speaking, if you have map control, it's easier for you. If you don't have map control and you have to retake map control, it's inherently harder. Why? Because you have to retake space, your tanks are under more pressure, they need more heals, whereas the enemy team in this situation, the red team, has maybe tanks that are just naturally maybe set up, maybe over here or over here, and the supports are there to help them, but because the tanks don't need to actually walk necessarily, they don't need as much heals and can apply immediate pressure to maybe blue teams, or blue teams tanks which have to walk. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, if it doesn't make sense, you can say something in comments and I'll happily try and answer and explain it better. So moving on. Now, this VOD is specifically talking about proactively taking map space. That's a very large topic. I wanted to talk about one thing specifically about this, which is focused on after a fight is done and how deaths impact, a hero's death impacts taking space. A lot of people don't actually fully think about how deaths impact stuff. I'll explain this a little bit more detail. For instance, let's say you are playing double shield comp mirror, and your both teams have Orisa Sigma. You're attacking, and you are trying to retake map space. Enemy team is set up, right? They have map control, and let me just give you a visual example here. Here we go. So the enemy team is set up here. They have map control. You are attacking. You look to push, and you kill everyone. The last person you kill is Orisa for some reason. Let's just say it's the last person you kill is Orisa. Or let's make it more realistic. Last person you kill is Sigma. Last person you kill is Sigma. That is relevant. Why is that relevant? Because that is going to be the last person to respawn. How does that help you guys? Well, that means now that if you guys maybe push over here and force a spam war, or maybe just force a straight out brawl, they're going to be down an extra shield. So, and someone holding space, that maybe you can push it harder. Something that maybe make it even easier is, let's say the last kill for red team here was BAP. If it was BAP, that means that they'd have low heals, and the people on this in this situation wouldn't maybe be able to actually hold space. So this fight happens, blue team pushes in, the last person they kill is BAP. So now when this fight goes on to the second point, red team maybe tries to set up and tries to push. and the enemy team's going, and blue team's looking to set up, and they're sort of fighting right now to see who sets up first. That happens. It's a little bit more complicated topic, but I'm not going to go into that too much. But what I want you to realize now is that red team would be like, hey, we killed their BAP last. That means our BAP's going to respawn last. Because their BAP respawns last, we can push really aggressive and try and like just push into them because they have less heals and we maybe have a healing advantage. Obviously, yes, I am assuming something. What am I assuming? That like red team here preferably has like 6 people, right? Or maybe they're down 1 person. That's not that important. So it's a 5v5 where they still have an advantage. But they have majority of their team. So they can push and they're like, oh, the BAP's down. Let's go push really hard. They push really hard, right? They aggressively push. They, maybe push through here, fight blue, fight for this map, for the map space, and then, end up winning and then take map control. Okay, so this is a very slight example. Hopefully this makes sense. So we're going to go through the different scenarios and why this is important and talk about different types of heroes. This topic is pretty big, like I said. I'm only talking about one specific thing about how deaths impact, the next fight and how you can use that to your advantage in the next fight. There's also how deaths impact mid-fight stuff. And if you're interested in that, you can definitely go check out I think my Brawl mid-fights video, or dynamic my Brawl mid-fight video. I'm pretty sure it should be there. You can look somewhere. Hopefully it'll pop up somewhere there, or it'll be in the links down below. But yeah, so let's look at some examples. So, like I said, just focused on after fight, how deaths impact taking space. So retaking map control. So this is the first one we're talking about, right? It was retaking map control. There's obviously having map control. We're first going to focus on retaking map control. So when we are retaking map control, that means the enemy team is set up. We'll use sort of this example again. And enemy team is we're retaking, so we're blue. Enemy team has map control. They're red. So if we win, right, the fight, then we're looking to set up and hold. So if we did win this fight, then we'd be looking to try and push up here and try and take the space before they can and hold map space. So what does it mean for us when we have this fight over here where we're pushing in, enemy team is set up, and we get a last death, so the last death on enemy team, like we talked about BAP, for example. If anything is staggered, right, we can essentially abuse that. So for heals, right, we can be more aggressive or more spammy. So if the last death is a BAP, right, that's pretty big. If it's a tank, maybe like an Orisa or Sigma, they're down a shield. That's also very useful as well. Maybe it's a DPS. Maybe they're down their Tracer. Maybe they're down their Widow. Maybe they're down a Hanzo, right? That means that maybe their one-tap potential is gone. Hence, we can be more aggressive. If their Tracer's gone, maybe then we don't have to worry about flankers. If their Sigma's dead, maybe they're not going to look to hold spaces aggressively. Like, for example, if a Sigma's dead, maybe no one's going to play over here. Hence, our Hanzo can go take the space instantly. So these are sort of things that are important to understand, because based off that last death, someone on your team inherently will have an advantage micro-wise, as well as a team. You'll also have a macro advantage in terms of understanding how more aggressive you can play and what more space you can go look to push. So hopefully this makes sense. This is last death. The first death. Why is the first death important? Well, this will say who's going to come out and pressure us first. It also gives us general scouting information. If we know the first death was maybe an Orisa, or maybe it was a Sigma and the last death was BAP, then we know, hey, the Orisa is going to come out first. He's not going to actually have much heals, so he can push really aggressively. So, does a person actually have the support to hold space for the tank? The DPS, if it's a DPS that comes out, can we just 2v1? Maybe it's a Widow, and the Widow looks to aggressively hold over here. And we're like, well, the Widow just playing really aggressive, but it's just the Widow here. We can just push the Widow. Because we sort of understand that this person respawned first, and other people may not be there. Emphasis on may not. You're taking a small risk, but you can obviously scout too. And maybe it's just a support. You could say, well, let's just frag the support, or let's just aggressively take space, because what is a support really going to do? Okay, so this is if we win the fight. We could try and retake space, right, or attack the enemy team and lose. What happens if we lose? Well, if we lose, then we sort of have to go for another fight, right? We're going to have to, approach this again. But what does it still mean? If we lose a fight, don't just lose the fight and not get any value out of it. Look to get some proactive value. And what I mean by that is, let's say you push in right over here, And here, I'll actually use third point as an example. Let's say we're pushing and we're attacking. Scope is high ground. Actually, wait, that was drawn a little wrong. Was drawn wrong. There we go. There. And the enemy team is holding up here with like double shield, so they have like Orisa plus Sigma. And we look to push, right? So we are retaking map space. The enemy team has map space, and we would lose the fight. But the first death maybe is, let's say, like, I don't know, like their Hanzo or something. And the fight goes on. Then after that, maybe we kill their Sigma last, okay? Kill the Sigma last. Now, this can be useful for us. Why? If we're able to be fast and maybe quickly respawn and then push up again, and their Sigma is not here, obviously, yes, they might have somewhat of a spawn advantage because they're on defense, and defensive has spawn add to some extent. But what I'm getting at is this could be useful because in this situation, we can be like, hey, their Sigma's down. That Sigma may not be able to retake space fast enough and get this high ground. Hence, we can push up here with 2 shields and then push aggression and maybe take that and use that, right? So what I'm getting at is if you're in a losing fight and you already know the fight's like sort of over and you're like, don't just stand there and just like don't look for kills. Don't just back up and die. No, look to actually kill something and like kill multiple things, because then maybe later the next fight, if you push and set up fast and go fast, the enemy team may not actually be ready because they're still coming back from spawn or still setting up, and you can abuse that. So that's what this is getting at, right? Where it's like last death, right? The heals, we can play more aggressive heals. Tanks, we can push harder. They can't control space well. DPS, maybe we can play angles harder. We can maybe look for frags. It's sort of the same exact type of concept here. It's just in a different way, where it's like, okay, we lost a fight, but how can we still get value here? Well, we can still get value by just being inherently more aggressive and try and get kills at the end, and then abusing the fact that they're dead at the next fight. And then first death wouldn't really matter because they would be back before we attack again. So it's only really that last death, which is why I said, like, don't just give up at the end of the fight. The amount of times I see teams that be like, oh, we're over here, oh, we're losing, and then they just kite back me and they just die. No, just look to try and like push in and try and int for a kill and try and get something out of it, and then hope that kill gives you value next fight. Okay, now let's look at this differently. Let's look now if we have map control. So if we have map control, right, and we win, well, let's use third point for example. Let's say we have map control and we're like right over here, and the enemy team, we've been using red, we'll use red again. So we have map control, we've been blue. So there we go, we're blue, and the enemy team is retaking. So we have map control, we won. So what does it mean now by us seeing first death or last death? Well, first death will tell us, again, the same type of information where it'll say that, okay, this person will come back first and whatnot. Last death will say, again, who we can abuse. Obviously, that shouldn't matter too much, but I would say first death says something because it says when they're like, first person's here and they're getting ready to push, as well as does that person have support or is that person overextending? Let's say it's an Orisa and that was the first person we killed. First Orisa starts coming back and Orisa starts pushing up really aggressively. If we realize it's really early on and the enemy team just hasn't respawned yet, then we can be like, hey, that Orisa died first. That person's playing really aggressive. Can we just push in and kill this Orisa and then maybe get a free kill and then get value there? But again, very unlikely that might happen. But maybe you get maybe you're playing with Mei, you get a good wall, and you just push in. You're like, let's just go for it. Sure. So what I would get at here, right, is first death is an indicator the team will be back soon. If the person overextends, you can look to punish possibly. Last deaths, right? Like, again, you can maybe push hard as they have low heals. You can do all the normal things you normally could. It's just that it's a little riskier because it's a little harder to know when they'll actually come up, as well as you already have space on the map. You don't necessarily need to overextend and like try and push something that you may or may not win. So it's up to you, but maybe you could be really proactive. In Brawl, this is a technique where you just overextend a little bit to like, you see someone out of position, you just push them, wall, kill. So you could definitely do that. If you lose now, so this is definitely interesting, and I'll give you an example right over here. Let's say we are set up here and the enemy team pushes. This is a good example. Or over, well, I guess let's say we're over here. Enemy team is over here. They push into us and we lose the fight. Well, now let's say the first death is maybe a Hanzo, right? The last death is maybe, let's say, a Orisa this time, okay? We int and we kill the Orisa. This is insanely crucial. Why? Because we have map control, and in this situation, we might have a better spawn advantage. Hence, when we realize we killed their Orisa, we can be like, hey, we killed their Orisa. Now they only have one shield. Then going into the next fight, going into this next fight here, we now can look to go take the high ground here with both our shields, and the enemy team may not have their Orisa back. Hence, we can just push them off and get value out of it. Or maybe, let's say the last death was BAP, right? Same thing, right? The last death was BAP. That's awesome. We can, again, look to push up here, look to spam them hard, play a little longer fights. They'll get low, take space, and get value. So definitely understand, right, how last death really can impact. And don't just give up fights when the fight's going on. Don't just like back up and be like, ah, yeah, we lost, and then you just kite, right? Like, if you can get out, sure, like that's fine. And I'm not going to go too much into this right now, but if you get out, look to at least get out to a position where you can retake that space faster. Don't just get out and go like over here and hide. Look to get out to a more proactive position so you can like at least soft hold space for your team. And that's also important, but that's a separate video that maybe I'll do and talk about. But hopefully this makes sense. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to let me know in the comments. I know it was a little bit longer than the ones I've been doing before. A little bit more complicated, I'd say, but it is something really interesting. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching till the end, and make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you guys.